Let's get into it. Sold Not For Sale podcast. Coach Colin here. We got some different clips for you guys today. We got Joe Rogan, of course. We got Tucker Carlson after that. And then we have Shawn Ryan after that. What they're talking about is the wokeification of the military. Now, Joe Rogan's going to touch on that. Tucker's going to touch on that, just showing how it's become woke, how they feel about that. Then Shawn Ryan sits down with Pete Hegseth, and they discuss how Pete realizes it's woke, and he blames it on none other than Obama. Obama's military is where it became very woke, very DEI, very watch out for microaggressions. And he breaks down how he would rid the wokeness from the military. And then we're going to go into a bunch of clips of how they're attacking Pete, why they're attacking Pete, and then some wise words from Nancy Pelosi, actually, at the end of what they're actually doing with Pete. Because again, these people are not trying to bring you the news. They're trying to mold your reality. And this is just another example of that. But let's start off with the Rogan clip first, and we'll work down the line.
What do you think happened in terms of like this crazy woke that's invaded the military? I never thought I would see it in the military. I thought that would be the one sector of our society that would be immune to that kind of ridiculous ideology.
I mean, I just think that people, people have gotten so, they get offended by everything. And I don't know,
But why?
Well, because
coming from a person who's served and been in combat duty and experienced the horrors, like real problems. Like, what is it about that?
I mean,
this woke shit.
I mean, I just think that life, we have first world problems,
right?
And that's it, right?
It's the ultimate first world problem, right?
It is, and that's most of our problems here are ultimate first world problems, and but again, you have to understand, talk about my generation, my generation, we had access to the internet, right? Like everything was kind of instant gratification. I didn't have to go out and raise a garden, and I didn't have to do the things that my grandparents had to do to be able to live and to be able.
Right.
Everything's convenient for me, but it doesn't mean that so these people who are portraying these problems, they are true problems to them, and they are that big of a deal to them, but it's kind of like when you're looking at your kids, like when my daughter comes to me and she's like, so and so, he said this and it hurt my feelings, and she's devastated. It goes back to adversity. That is the biggest problem she's ever dealt with, and it is that big to her.
Right.
Just because it's not to me, because I've dealt with all this other, it is that big to her. And that's what's happening with everybody else, is we have first world problems here, and they haven't had adversity, and they haven't had to have that. And so these things come up, and instead of learning how to deal with them, we're trying to cater to them.
Right.
I think when he's saying that, I think that's what he truly believes. I think there's layers to it. I think there's always layers, right? There's a tinfoil Speedo layer, and we go into that layer a lot. I hope you have yours on. We go into that layer. And then there's the layer of, let's just be a normal person. What's the normal explanation? And that's the normal explanation. I think there's a layer behind it where that was done intentionally. And I don't think it was done for ESG or anything like that. I don't think it happened just because, society's woke, and then, people from society get into the US military, and then it slowly becomes woke. I think it was very intentional. Now, I don't know if it was to weaken the force, or if it was just a huge virtue signal from Obama, from Biden, or even people who got into the military slowly, like they have that one drag queen who is a Navy recruiter. And for some reason, they're not recruiting in high numbers anymore in the Navy. Well, couldn't understand why. Maybe it's the guy in the dress and the crazy makeup. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But I think there's intentionality behind it. Again, Trump's talked about it, the enemy within. I think that goes everywhere. I think that's in the Senate. I think that's in Congress. I think that's in local government. I think there's just these people. I don't think it's everybody, but I think there's certain just people put everywhere. and they have this intention to weaken things from the inside. Let's move on to Tucker Carlson, what Tucker Carlson has to say about all this. This is from, I don't want to say the Obama era, but I think the tail end here.
This show has obtained video of a U.S. Air Force staff psychologist, a man called Dr. Ryan Warner, leading an online seminar called Unmasking Microaggressions in the Workplace that happened on June 5th. In the video lecture, which was also delivered to the USDA and the Forest Service, Warner links so-called microaggressions to the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis. Watch.
These innocent, subtle things, they may not seem like a big deal to some, but as we see in today's society, similar to what happened to George Floyd, those microaggressions, those unconscious bias can ultimately lead to more significant and severe impacts.
Right. So if you hadn't offended your coworker by asking her where she's from, a microaggression, then George Floyd might still be alive. That's lunacy. It's also incredibly stupid, but it's the official message of a staff psychologist at a U.S. Air Force base. It's not just Dr. Warner, he's a symptom of a much larger problem. Remember that this summer it emerged that the U.S. Army's so-called Operation Inclusion told soldiers in Alabama that the phrase "Make America Great Again" is a form of, quote, socially acceptable covert white supremacy. Right, that's the campaign slogan of the commander-in-chief. Now, according to the Army's, quote, Equity and Inclusion Agency, the phrases "all lives matter," American exceptionalism, and, quote, the celebration of Columbus Day are also examples of white supremacy. They're racist too. It goes on like this. In May of 2017, the U.S. Coast Guard spent $8,600 on diversity training led by white fragility author and noted lunatic Robin DiAngelo. The Defense Intelligence Agency, meanwhile, a supposedly serious place staffed by serious people, also endorsed DiAngelo's crackpot race theories. The head of the DIA, Lieutenant General Robert Ashley, said in a recent town hall and in his weekly email to employees that white fragility was recommended reading. Meanwhile, over at NASA, employees are being directed to resources concerning white fragility, an Atlantic piece, the Atlantic magazine, called Microaggressions Matter, and a guide on how to be a good, quote, white ally. Remember, this is an agency that you pay for that is designed to launch rockets and study space. In August of 2018, the Department of the Navy gave a group called White Men as Full Diversity Partners almost 10 grand a contract for training services. That was the same group that hosted a 3-day diversity re-education camp last year at Sandia National Laboratories. That's the outfit that designs our nuclear weapons to defend the country existentially. In the opening session for white men, and only white men, at Sandia Labs, the trainers demanded that the men make a list of associations about white male culture. This is so sick. The trainers wrote that some of the associations included, quote, white supremacists, KKK, Aryan Nation, MAGA hat, privileged, and mass killings. Is anyone actually okay with this? Does anyone want to be subjected to this? Want your sons subjected to this? They didn't do anything wrong. They were just born a certain way. This is evil. And it's also the most corrosive thing we can do. It's hard to imagine even MSNBC contributors really want, I don't know, nuclear submarines in our Navy, wasting time hating themselves when they should be defending our nation. So what is this really about? Why are they doing this? Well, of course, it's about capturing the U.S. military for the political left. That's what it's about, nothing else. And it's working. At the Pentagon, a shockingly high number of flag officers seem sympathetic to radical left-wing social theories. Shockingly high. Secretary of Defense Mark Esper clearly is as well. Even among uniformed troops, new polls show that the president's support is now underwater. So the point is, their plans have paid off. The question is, why is the left so intent on controlling the minds of our military? Well, there could be many reasons for that. None of them are good.
There you go. Near the end, Tucker even said, let me just throw on my tinfoil speedo real quick. And, that's a good question to ask. Why do they want to control the minds of the military? And again, I already brought up what I was thinking. I think it's every facet. I'll say it. I've said it before. I'm going to show you that drag queen character. I've said it before, but where's this drag queen? Hold on. Navy. I'm trying to do too many things at once here. I need a producer. So much easier for Joe. You know, you can just be talking, somebody's just doing it for you. Oh, there he is. Beautiful. There he is. Let me just... No music needed. Thank you. This Navy SEAL is also a drag queen. Yeah, this guy. I mean, good on him for, you know, getting through Bud's training, you know? Can't take that away from him. But good Lord. This guy's recruiting people. Why? Look, what? Why? Who thinks this is a good idea? It's okay to just be like, we just want some rough and tumble white guys, some big black guys, some very capable Hispanic men, and we want them all to be super masculine. It's okay to have in the military. It's completely okay to be saying that. For some reason, they're like, no, we need diversity here. I don't know, man. It weakens. And here's the thing. And I'm going to talk about it. I'll bring it up now. You know, Tucker Carlson did an interview with Jimmy Dore. Jimmy Dore was interviewing Tucker. It was on Jimmy's channel. And they talk about, there you have it. They talk about, we're going to swing over to Pete Hegseth here. What they talk about is the fact that there's such low recruiting numbers of Americans going into the military that they have been discussing heavily giving illegal immigrants a path to citizenship by having them in the military and also having them in the police force. And this is not a tinfoil thing. You can find there's high-ranking officials having speeches about this, saying there's so many people who would be willing to. And the thing about it is, and I think you know where this is going, once you have a whole different group of people in the military and in the police force, they may be willing to do things that an all-American type of guy like Pete would not do to American citizens. So now you can slip off your tinfoil Speedo there if you want, if it's chafing you, but I would say keep it on. But let's play this clip from Pete here. I got to just pull it back a little bit. 24 minutes. This is actually a great podcast. And in respect to Shawn Ryan, this is the Shawn Ryan podcast. He has a thing where he's like, use my content. Just shout out the podcast. Everybody knows Shawn Ryan. This is his podcast. Check out his channel. Let's go.
Service. So senior enlisted, junior officers, senior officers, all branches, MOSs, eras, but mostly guys in right now, generals, privates. And all the same themes came out. You know, standards are dropping. The woke stuff is everywhere. I feel like I'm walking on eggshells. I heard that all the time. Eggshells. I'm a commander. I walk on eggshells. I train commanders. They're walking on eggshells. They're afraid of one misstep on one identification or one gender thing or one racial thing or one trans thing. And the priorities are upside down on what the units are focusing on. And every single one of those distractions means we're less good at our job. Which is supposed to be closed with and destroy the enemy on behalf of our nation and bring our boys home. That's all I care about. That's what I want our military focused on. And so, yeah, I tell a few of my own stories in the book, but the book's not about me at all.
How do you think that this is happening?
Well, it's a long story. Well, I think it's because they're ideologues who want to bring a meritocracy to heel. That's where I think it starts. I think you have politicians who don't want to tolerate an institution. First, they want to use it to tinker. And then they also don't want to tolerate an institution that's antithetical to their social experiments. Because the military, you know, I mean, the book lays this out. Of course, like the integration of the military racially was a huge success. It was a huge success because black men and Hispanic men and others can perform just as well as white guys in any capacity that they're given. So the reality of life reinforced that the bigotry we saw on the outside should not be tolerated inside the military, and the military did a great job doing that. But now we're pushing boundaries on lots of different levels that are different than that because men and women are different. Because being transgendered in the military causes complications and differences. And the book kind of lays out the common arguments that those on the left or others make, which are baked in social justice. So it started, you know, you saw it under Clinton with the tinkering of Don't Ask, Don't Tell and the reasons for those changes. And I talked to some of the people involved in when that was changed. But it really happened started to accelerate under Obama. And you saw the trans stuff come at the end of the Obama administration. You saw the women in combat come at the end of the Obama administration. It's because they looked around at the bureaucracies that they controlled in Washington, and the one that was that they didn't control. Obama spent a disproportionate amount of time focusing on the Pentagon. They were skeptical of leadership and eventually brought in political appointees and generals who would do their bidding the way they wanted, which, as you know, in a top-down organization, changes the ethos of the whole thing. So the book is meant to pull the whole curtain back, mostly from Obama forward, and explain how the army that I enlisted in, or that I swore an oath in 2001 and was commissioned in 2003, looks a lot different than the army of today, because we're focused on a lot of the wrong things. I mean, you know this. You could talk about it all day, I bet.
We could. I'm trying to organize my thoughts here, figure out what rabbit holes to go down. But I mean, they've been wildly successful in morphing the military into this whatever you want to call it. And I do want to. Do you want to talk about? I don't want to forget about having your kids join the military.
Sure. Yep.
Maybe we end with that.
Sure.
Because I have a lot of thoughts on that too. But I mean, I don't know, man. I mean, I think about this all the time. I mean, you know, you watch the show. I've had active duty guys on. I've had the most badass American warriors that we've ever produced on this show, and everybody says the same thing. They don't all say it on camera because it doesn't. We don't always go into that, but I do ask them, you know, all of them, like, how is it? How is it in there? You know, these, especially the guys that just got out, they're all disgusted. They're all demoralized.
Totally.
I feel like the gas really got turned on when the defund the police movement happened. I knew it was going to bleed in because I thought the defund the police, I was like, this isn't about this shit. They want to rid the LE agencies of the old guard because they all think alike. They do a damn good job. And so let's destroy it and rebuild it with a new mindset. And that happened. I think that happened. Do you think it happened?
Yes, I do. I mean, if you look at the back cover of the book, it says, I joined the Army to fight extremists in 2001. 20 years later, that same Army labeled me one.
Yeah.
So I got out because, and I can tell the story or not, but I was deemed an extremist because of a tattoo by my National Guard unit in Washington, D.C. And my orders were revoked to guard the Biden inauguration. But all of this, so you have what happened with George Floyd.
What a punishment.
I know. It's actually, you put it that way, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. You know, but you had the George Floyd riots, and then I was also in the D.C. Guard during what happened in front of the White House. You remember the insurrection that no one calls an insurrection outside the White House when they, burned the church down and got to the gates of the White House. I was there the second night through the fifth night of all of that. I was a 04 major holding a riot shield because they didn't have enough guys. So we were just out there doing our thing and explain a little bit about that. That happens, then January 6th happens. And both of those moments become pretenses for the DOD with political appointees who've long since been burrowed in and generals who are all in for the politically correct agenda. They maybe kept their head down during Trump because he didn't want to hear about it. Guys like Milley, guys like Austin, they were right there waiting in the wings, ready to go. And once the combination of Floyd and January 6th happened, they went all in on DEI and CRT and transformation, focusing on patriot extremism. We talk all about that in the book. You know, Gadsden flags are signs of radicalism. Get the bumper sticker off your car. A Jerusalem cross tattoo, which is just a Christian symbol.
Is that the
this is the one?
Is that the tattoo?
Yep, right here. This one is what got me disinvited, or I'd never had orders revoked before. I mean, listen, it's a standard deal. You remember after January 6th, everyone was in Washington, D.C. Like Nancy Pelosi had the parking garages full of National Guardsmen. Mm-hmm. The fence was up. I was going, and my commander called me a day before tepidly and was like, Major, you can just stand down. We don't need you. We're good. I'm like, what do you mean? Everybody's there. He's like, no, he couldn't tell me. And then, of course, when I was writing the book, I reached out to somebody in the unit who could confirm with 99.9% certainty, because he was in the meetings and on the emails, Nope. Someone inside the DC Guard trolled your social media, found a tattoo, used it as an excuse to call you a white nationalist, an extremist, and you were specifically by name orders revoked to guard the inauguration because you were considered a potential threat.
How is that? It's a cross.
It's a Christian symbol. That's all it is. There's a lot of guys with, I got a Christian symbol here. I got, no, because it wasn't about that. It was about, I don't know, I'm too conservative? Is it because I'm a Trump supporter? Is it because I was a reporter on January 6th?
So they just didn't want you there. And so that was the...
Maybe I worked at Fox. Maybe that's what it was. They had decided Pete Hegseth is not qualified to guard the inauguration of a Democrat president, which is ridiculous because I volunteered to go to Afghanistan under Barack Obama. I'm no Democrat, but I was hopeful the surge in Afghanistan might work, and I volunteered to go in 2011, 2012. So it's never been about, for guys like you and me, it's never been about Republicans and Democrats. It's been about the Republic. And it's all been put into question in everyone's mind. And so there's a chance to course correct it, but it would take a new Trump administration going after it really hard.
How would they correct it?
Well, first of all, you got to fire, you got to fire the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and you got to fire this. I mean, obviously, you're going to bring in a new Secretary of Defense, but any general that was involved, general, admiral, whatever that was involved in any of the DEI woke shit, has got to go. Either you're in for war fighting, and that's it. And that's the only litmus test we care about. You got to get DEI and CRT out of military academies, so you're not training young officers to be baptized in this type of thinking. And then, whatever the standards, whatever the combat standards were, say, in, I don't know, 1995, let's just make those the standards. And as far as recruiting, to hire the guy that, did Top Gun Maverick and create some real ads that motivate people to want to serve. And there's lots of other ways in which you could identify who gets promoted and what, but there's an ethos change. I mean, there's a reason people don't want to serve, because they don't trust that their senior leaders are going to have their best interest in mind in combat. I know there were mistakes made on our tours all over the place, but I, at least for the most part, had a sense that my senior leaders were committed to the completion of the mission for the right reasons. And maybe there were strategic differences and all that other stuff, and it wasn't always perfect, but that trust is broken, and you have to reestablish that trust by putting in no-nonsense warfighters in those positions who aren't going to cater to the socially correct garbage.
Man, I like that guy. Now, of course, with all the clips that I'm going to be showing you right now, keep in mind everything he just said, so you understand exactly why the attacks are happening. That's the reason I like to show things like this, right? A little bit of Rogan, a little bit of Tucker, but, the Shawn Ryan clip right there, because that's the part that people don't see. A lot of people who are, a lot of people call them low information voters. They're people who just kind of watch mainstream, read headlines, things like that. They don't take in what I just showed you. So when they see all the things that I'm about to show you, starting with The View, of course, they really think, well, this is just what's happening, these wonderful ladies just found out all this stuff about this Pete character, and they're just bringing me the goods. That's really what they think. And then it happens on platform, show after show, outlet after outlet. And again, it starts to mold people's reality. It must be true. Sonny said it. Sonny said it, and Joe Scarborough said it. I mean, come on. What more do you need to know?
This is what America voted for. I'm not surprised at this pick. I do agree with Adam Kinzinger that he's deeply unserious. He said this once: the Pentagon likes to say our diversity is our strength. What a bunch of garbage. In the military, our diversity is not our strength. I think that says a lot about who he is. I think what he said about women says a lot about who he is. He also said, first of all, you've got to fire the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, which happens to be General Charles Brown, Jr., a black man. And so I think we're seeing misogyny play out. I think we're seeing racism play out. And, we should be disgusted. We should be very, very concerned, as Alyssa has pointed out, about how important this position was. But again, I'm not surprised that he would choose someone
No,
so
but
deeply.
I do think the
So there you have it. Of course, he's racist. He's misogynistic. Now, what he said that they are trying to say that he's misogynist about is that he said he doesn't want women in combat. He doesn't want them in combat positions. You know, obviously you get trained up on everything, but he wants them in positions where they're not actually fighting. Then when he says diversity is not the strength, you know, I have a buddy who lives out in Idaho. Great guy, great squared away guy. What's going on, Mike? And big into tactical training, knows a lot of stuff. He's like one of those guys, you know? And he was saying the same thing. He's like, diversity is not the strength. And he's like white, and I think he's native as well. He's like, diversity is not the strength. He goes, you have to be unified. He's like, if everybody's so diverse, there's no strength in that. That's actually weakness. And same thing goes with the military. If everybody's viewed as so different, it becomes a liability, you know? If everybody's unified, if it's just like, we're all brothers here. We're all brothers here. We're not talking about color. I don't care that you're black. I don't care that you're Hispanic. I don't care that you're Asian. We're all brothers here. We're all Americans here. We know the enemy. We're going in. And we're all going to die for each other if need be. That's as much as you need. You don't need to say, oh, well, my black brother here, and I know what he's been through, so I'm going to watch what I say to him, and, you know, everything's good, and, you know, I'll take a knee with you if I need to, and my Asian brother here, you know, I want to, you don't, no. It's just as bad as if they all spoke different languages, because that would be diversity. Imagine a SEAL team. They all speak different languages. They don't know each other's languages. That's diversity, but is that a strength or a weakness? You know what I mean? It's very interesting that she would say that. But again, you know, she's like, oh, he's going to fire a black guy. Well, that's racist. Well, maybe the black guy was into all of this DEI woke nonsense, and he's not going to go along with everybody just being unified and just being brothers in arms and just going after the enemy. And that guy becomes a liability. So maybe he needs to go. It's not because he's black, you know? Unless he's doing all of this solely because he's black, well then, you know, maybe it is. I don't know. But if he's just doing it because that's what he believes, he needs to go. Just makes sense.
Add the Secretary of Defense nominee, Peter Hegseth, the Fox News commentator as well, because this is someone who, weekend host, important distinction. This is someone who, you know, is known to be a white supremacist, known to be an extremist, whose platform, whose book is basically about his opposition to the advancement of black officers to the top brass. And then add the Secretary of Defense.
He's known to be a white supremacist. You see, that's the type of thing they do in the media. They just say he's known to be, and anybody watching, they're like, oh, well, he's known to be. But they're not giving you any background into how they know him to be that, because if you really looked into it, it's the tattoos. It's the tattoos that got him framed as a white supremacist. But they're just Christian tattoos. I'm even looking at his We the People tattoo, and I'm like, I might get that on my hand, because I'm into hand tattoos, as you guys know already. I might get that on my hand, We the People, just right across. We'll see. I'm going to be getting a lot of tattoos. There's a show idea that I have where I go and get tattooed all over the country, so I'm going to be getting a whole bunch of different tattoos. I might start with We the People and end with an American flag, go through all 50 states. But what they're saying there, they're trying to mold that around you. They're trying to let you know he's not a host, he's a weekend host. Important distinction. And also, he's known to be a white supremacist. And it just scares me that he's even in this position. It's like, what are you talking about? It's amazing that they're doing stuff like this. Here, let me just silence that. But I just want to go over something that they said here. Sonny said he's deeply unserious. Now, again, that's why I love to show you the clip from Sean Ryan's podcast. Does this sound like a guy who's deeply unserious? It sounds like a guy who's actually thought about being in this position. Again, Trump wants this guy because he's about the soldiers and not about, you know, bowing like what Obama wanted, not about bowing down to those people, but he's about the soldiers. And that's the kind of person that you need in control. And just to say, Millie and Austin, I keep hearing these names pop up constantly. These two, a lot of people want these guys out. A lot of people are asking for them to be gone. They've done a lot of bad. Trump himself has talked about Millie, talked about him being potentially, a bad actor. We'll just put it like that. Trump says it a little differently, obviously. And Sean Ryan just talking about how defund the police leaked into the military, because defund the police goes along with George Floyd. It goes along with Take a Knee. It goes along with Black Lives Matter. And again, all of these things were to destabilize the streets of America. So again, back to being in the tinfoil Speedo for a second, why wouldn't we think that this was an attempt to destabilize the military? Anyway, let's get into what Trump has to say.
It looks like Peter's doing well now. I mean, people were a little bit concerned. He's a young guy with a tremendous track record, actually. He went to Princeton and went to Harvard. He was a good student at both, but he loves the military, and I think people are starting to see it. So we'll be working on his nomination along with a lot of others.
Since you bring him up, do you still have confidence in Pete Hegseth?
Yes, I do. I really do. He's a very smart guy. I've known him through Fox, but I've known him for a long time. And he's basically a military guy. I mean, every time I talk to him, all he wants to talk about is the military. He's a military guy. It looks like Peter's doing well.
Now, further into this clip, she says, like, but you're worried. Are you worried about the fact that he drinks a lot? A lot of people are saying that he drinks a lot. And again, he's like, Trump's like, well, I've talked to many people who know him well, and they say that he doesn't drink a lot. Like, Trump was very nice in this interview. Like, he could have been way more combative if he wanted to. But he was just like, well, I've talked to a lot of people who say that he doesn't drink a lot. And again, she only brings that up to just put the stink on him. The same way that black woman did. Well, he's a white supremacist. Oh, well, you know he's a drunk, right? They're just putting it out there. That way, again, the low information people can just be like, well, I heard he's a white supremacist and he's a drunk. That he's just not a serious person. Sonny told me so. You know, that lady that sits with Whoopi Goldberg, you know, the serious people in media. Anyway, let's hear a little bit of words from Pete, because Trump has been standing strong behind him, and he's informed Pete that he needs to keep fighting and to not stop. He's asked him to not stop fighting. He's asked him to not back down, because this is a guy that Trump really wants in this position.
And I'm proud of what I fought for. I'm not going to back down from them one bit. I will answer all of these senators' questions, but this will not be a process tried in the media. I don't answer to anyone in this group. None of you, not to that camera at all. I answer to President Trump, who received 76 million votes on behalf and a mandate for change. I answer to the 100 senators who are part of this process and those in the committee. And I answer to my Lord and Savior and my wife and my family. I'm proud to be here. And as long as Donald Trump wants me in this fight, I'm going to be standing right here in this fight, fighting to bring our Pentagon back to what it needs to be.
What have your conversations?
He's white, he's Christian, he's not taking any guff, he's married, has a nuclear family, believes in his Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. All of the things that will get you attacked by this odd leftist media who despises the nuclear family, wants white guys to become, as Tucker Carlson showed in that clip, be good white allies, which means be a good boy, be a little quiet, back down a little bit, let a black female take your role, please and thank you. And he's not letting any of that happen. So just so you understand why these attacks are happening, this is actually his mother here speaking a little bit about being kind of threatened here.
They were going through, Pete and his wife at the time were going through a very difficult divorce. It was a very emotional time, and I'm sure many of you across the country understand how difficult divorce is on a family. There's emotions. We say things, and I wrote that in haste. I wrote that with deep emotions. I wrote that as a parent, and about 2 hours later, I should. My husband told me I should think through things a little bit more, but Pete and I are both very passionate people. I wrote that out of love, and about 2 hours later, I retracted it with an apology email, but nobody's seen that. So it was a difficult time. I want to say something about the media, and part of today is to discredit the media and how they operate. When they contact you, I let a few phone calls go, but then they call you and say they threaten you. That's the first thing they do. They say, unless you make a statement, we will publish it as is. And I think that's a despicable way to treat anyone. Threats are dangerous, and they're hard on families.
So she felt a little threatened by what they were doing. Of course, they're going after Pete's entire family. In fact, I believe his family, I'm not sure if it was their house, but they were actually threatened with a bomb threat of sorts. So they had to be protected. Same thing happened to Tom Homan. I believe same thing happened to Tulsi. I think it was like all of Trump's picks at once. Maybe not all of them, but a bunch of them all at once were threatened with bomb threats. And, back to putting on that tinfoil Speedo. What do you think happened there? Who would be ballsy enough to do that type of thing? I haven't actually listened to this clip all the way through, but it's Jocko. If you don't know about Jocko Willink, has a great podcast, military guy, Navy SEAL, does absolutely incredible interviews, and he has some words to say about America and needing good leaders right now.
So, during my 20 years in the Navy, I worked with every branch of service in almost every theater. I also worked very closely with our intelligence agencies. And in doing that, I interacted with some of the bravest, toughest, smartest, most committed, and most patriotic people imaginable. The Department of Defense and our national intelligence capabilities is what protects us and our way of life. And while these organizations are filled with some of the best people in the world, these organizations also have some problems. And some of those problems are just minor policy issues, but some are more systemic problems that are deeply rooted and negatively impact our ability to gather and process vital intelligence and to protect and defend our great nation. And in order to root out and resolve some of those more embedded problems, we need the right leadership of those organizations. Not just leaders, but I believe we need change agents. And that is why I believe that Tulsi Gabbard, as Director of National Intelligence, and Pete Hegseth, as Secretary of Defense, are the right leaders to oversee these powerful organizations, to plot the course to the future, and create the right culture inside of those organizations. A culture of peace through strength, a culture that supports our troops, a culture of readiness, discipline, and excellence. In short, a culture of victory. And these two leaders who have served in combat, who know the cost of war, and who understand the solemn burden of command. These are the types of leaders that Pete Hegseth and Tulsi Gabbard are. And that is why I fully support them in their nomination to these demanding roles. Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense and Tulsi Gabbard as Director of National Intelligence. Thank you to Pete and Tulsi for your continued service. And of course, thanks to all our men and women holding the line and defending our great nation in these tumultuous times.
See, you're not going to see anything like that in the mainstream media, letting you know that there's people who are servicemen, who have served a long time, who have led men to victory, led men to death, that are backing these people. They're not going to show you anything like that, There's more guys like Jocko who support Tulsi and Pete in these positions, and Kash Patel, and a lot of Trump's picks, but especially them. Like these are very special people. RFK as well. Those are very special, transformational for the entire nation picks that Trump made there, and those people. But you're not going to hear that there's more of these guys than there are of people who are like, he's a white supremacist. because again, they're just trying to mold your reality. They're not trying to inform you. You know, I'll show you the clip of people saying that Pete's a white supremacist, no problem. But I'm going to show you the clip where he's actually talking in full, so you can see that he's a straight-laced guy, serious guy, you know. And it's just to go back to what Jocko said, you know, Jocko's not a tinfoil Speedo guy. I mean, he's a squared away man. He's 240. He's ripped, jiu-jitsu, chokes people out, loves it, right? So I don't expect to see him in a tinfoil Speedo. But when he said the embedded problems, he's talking about exactly what I've been talking about. These embedded problems that are in there right now, you know? And I don't think it's just they're soft people, like the guy in the Joe Rogan clip said, Dakota Meyer. I don't think it's just that. I think it's very intentional. At the very least, they're placed in these positions very intentionally. We're going to hear CNN talk a little bit about Pete as well.
I know Pete, Major Pete, I call him pretty well, being on Fox and Friends Weekend for those many years, sitting on the couch with him, sharing the couch. Been out with him. I thought, as Scott mentions, that he was on the ropes for a lot of the stuff coming up that none of us had ever heard of before because of non-disclosures and so forth. But then Pete did something. Major Pete did something that I think is the difference between a combat veteran and the rest of the world. What Pete did was go to his combat brothers, and it was they who started speaking on his behalf, saying, talking about his courage, talking about how he earned those 2 Bronze Stars. How he never allowed his men to get in front of him in a hot zone. And I think that's what the Defense Department needs. That's what the Pentagon needs. And I think that realization swept subtly, but I think with growing momentum through Washington, D.C., that if you haven't served the country in combat, then shut up. Or, you know, you better respect.
I mean,
I know.
Oh, I bet they weren't expecting that last part, because no one at that table, maybe Scott Jennings, I don't actually know, but I would venture to think that no one at that table has actually served. And to have him just say, if you don't know about serving, you should shut up. It's very true. You know, I have not served. My father served, but it's I'll be honest, it's not something I have in me. I don't think I could do it, or else I would have years ago. It's a special type of breed that does that kind of thing. They need to be recognized for it, you know? Yeah, let's go into this is a funny one. This is just a funny, quick one. It's pretty much Pete just being very based right now. Here you go.
Do you believe that gay people should be allowed to serve in the military?
Yes.
You said, can you just respond to the CNN report this morning? It was highlighting some of your previous comments. Saying
I don't feel the need to respond to CNN. Have a good day, man.
You are comfortable with gay.
I don't feel the need to respond to CNN. But, you know, I will say kudos to them for having this guy on there and saying that type of thing. You know, I think Scott Jennings is having a big impact on CNN. They're starting to realize, oh, people will watch if there's a different voice and not just people who are propagandists. I think they're starting to realize that a little bit. And they're throwing it in here and there, but they're always leaving it where it's like one conservative guy and like 5 liberal people, and he has to kind of just try and fight them all a little bit, debate them all. So, you know, but they're still going to get this treatment, as they should. This is the treatment that they deserve. You can't say he's a white supremacist one day, have somebody be positive the next day, and think that Pete's going to be okay answering questions from you guys, obviously. What is this? Oh, no, this is a different clip. Sorry. You know what this clip is. I'll give you a little bonus clip here. Just real quick. Listen to this.
A defund the police activist lost everything she owned when a U-Haul truck was stolen from her off the streets of San Francisco. She then went on to blast the police that she wants to defund and said to the New York Post, "The cops didn't do S." I don't think that additional commentary is even necessary here.
This lady actually was a defund the police activist, of course, from California, and And she got everything she owns stolen because it was all in a U-Haul. Someone stole the U-Haul, drove away with it, and she never got her stuff back. And of course, the first person she wanted to call were the police. Interesting. But like Pete's been talking about in regards to the military, has obviously happened with the police force as well. They don't feel like they can just do things. They don't want to really step out of bounds too much. They don't want to upset anybody. Maybe the person that stole everything is a person of color who's just taking it home to his family because they need it. And they don't want to intervene with that type of thing, you know? Anyway, let's get back to let's get back to Pete. That was just a little intermission real quick. Listen to this. Listen to this comparison. This is the type of stuff that they do. And it's kind of sad this is coming from Newsmax, honestly.
Is he a new man? Anybody can be forgiven. I know that. I know that. If you ask for forgiveness, of course. Is Hunter Biden a new man?
Just gross. He's literally in this segment, he's comparing Pete to Hunter Biden. So, you know, I'm sure there's every single person in the world has done things that are wrong or that they're not proud of. And Pete's no different than any other man in the world. And this gentleman takes that opportunity to jab at Pete and say, hey, you know, is he a new man? You know, is Hunter Biden a new man? And again, this is just to paint that reality to you. It's like, what, like from all these clips that I'm showing you, what is he getting associated with? All the negative clips. He's getting associated with white supremacy. He's getting associated with being racist. He's getting associated with being sexist. Right now, he just got associated with being a drug addict. They're just making the associations because that's all some people need. I've heard someone say he's a known white supremacist. I've heard another person say that he's sexist. I heard another person compare him to Hunter Biden. And we all know what Hunter Biden was like. It's a very dirty game that they're playing with him. But Nancy Pelosi is about to expose what that game exactly is that they're playing with Pete and Tulsi and all of Trump's picks. Listen to this. Listen to this mobster tell this little trick that they play.
Politics, call it the wrap-up smear. You smear somebody with falsehoods and all the rest, and then you merchandise it. And then you write it, and they'll say, see, it's reported in the press that this, and this. So they have that validation that the press reported the smear, and then it's called the wrap-up smear. Now I'm going to merchandise the press's report on the smear that we made. And it's a tactic. And politics, call it the wrap-up smear. You smear somebody with falsehoods and all the rest, and then you merchandise it. And then you write it, and they'll say, see, it's reported in the press that this, and this. So they have that validation that the press reported the smear, and then it's called the wrap-up smear. Now I'm going to merchandise the press's report on the smear that we made. And it's a tactic.
Wow. Nancy she doesn't care. She's in her 80s. She's like, I'll tell you everything that we do. Okay? We do a little wrap-up smear. You guys know how that works? Let me break it down for you guys. I got to get back to the stocks. But just real quick, let me just break down this. Absolutely amazing. So that is what they are doing. That is what they are doing to Pete. That's what they're doing to Kash Patel. That's what they're doing to Tulsi. That's what they're doing to RFK. That's what they're doing to all of Trump's major picks. All of the people who can transform the country from the Navy, from intel to health, they are trying to demonize. And what does that tell you about them? What does that tell you about what they actually want for you? What does that tell you about what they actually want for America? Think about it. Anyways, guys, like, subscribe, turn on the notifications, helps the channel tremendously. And other than that, I'm out.